And we're live. So, welcome to another Run Wild with Us, Ask Us Anything. I'm Lisa Kastner. I am the founder and executive editor of Running Wild and Rise Presses. And I am here with you on Thursdays between 5 and 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 and 9 p.m. Eastern Time, along with some of our amazing editors to answer any questions that you may have and actually just chat. If there's anything that you want to talk about, anything that you want to bring forward, please feel free. We actually, usually the kinds of questions people ask us are around the business of publishing, the business of writing, what we look for in books, the business, like creative writing in general, the art of writing, the industry itself, and or just anything completely irrelevant. I'm totally down for irrelevant. We're great with irrelevant. We're actually very good at irrelevant. So I just want to invite you that no matter where you are joining us from, whether it be YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, go ahead, pop your question into the comments section. And what happens is I repeat the question, and then we take turns in answering. And that is the gist of it. Hey Ben, how you doing, young man?
I made it.
Awesome to see you.
Oh, thanks.
It looks like my headset's not working, so screw that.
Okay.
Anything exciting happened this week?
Nothing.
Nothing.
No, just I'm still on the same projects. Wretched, Fallout, TFG, NFG, and the short stories. I did do some short stories this week, so that's progressing.
Oh, well, that's
And
great.
Wretched is progressing too.
Very nice.
So if you're listening and you have a short story in, I'm headed your way if you haven't heard from me already.
You are now. Nice. Awesome. Yeah, I finished the edits to the Cure short story anthology, and I'm now working on 2 novels and 2 novella anthologies. And I actually, so someone who, was one of the first Spider-Man, I don't know, is like a friend of a friend, and came to me and said, hey, I'm going to write my memoir. Would you look at it? And I thought, yeah, sure. Why not? Dude already sent it to me. So that's on my bucket list of things to check out this weekend.
Oh, nice.
Right? That should be fun, huh?
Yeah.
If only we could all be Spider-Man. Spider people.
Let me shoot my webs across the room.
And then for a treat to myself, my birthday's in November. I was able to get incredibly cheap tickets to Maui, Hawaii, and
yeah.
Hell, why not? It's been on my bucket list since I was a kid, and at least the one advantage you can get from it being on fire is you get cheap flights. So anyway,
I'm sure they'll appreciate some tourist dollar coming back.
Yeah, I'm sure. Exactly. Rod Gilly says a great big happy hello to you guys. Margaret Buchanan says, hey Ben, hey Lisa. Rod says my birthday is November 21st. So's mine. So game on,
there
man.
You go. So's mine.
So yeah, why not? The whole world. Why not? And tonight after this, I'm going to a venture capitalist get together. So where they get to meet with different entrepreneurs. So yeah. I don't know that anything will come of it, but it's only $20 and I get to meet people. So hell, why not? Yeah, it should minimally it'll be kind of fun.
Yeah, and they get to meet you,
and they get to and hell, why not? Rod Gilly says, I'll happily trade ages with you, Lisa. Then you can be old enough to have pearls of wisdom. Rod, if I told you my age, I don't know that you would believe me because typically people don't. So we just won't go there. Let's just say genetically, my family is well known for looking minimally 10, if not 30 years younger than they actually are. So, yeah. Margaret says, get to network at this event. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I just figure it's worth it. So,
oh, yeah.
Rod's like, I'll be 59. You're about half that. If you only knew.
Yeah. But the event's in the LA area?
Huh?
It's in LA?
Yeah, it's in LA. There's a nonprofit called LAVA, LA Ventures Association or something like that. And what they do is they reach out to like local businesses to find out like, hey, do you want to expand or do you need like investors, all that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
And they offer both like classes to help you prepare, like make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row. But then they also offer like the networking event, they call it reverse. Caroline says, hi guys, older than both of you, not to worry. I'm not going there. I'm just going to leave that.
Older than both of you separately, not put together.
Well, that, sure. Absolutely. So usually when you do like a venture capital pitch, it's they invite multiple entrepreneurs and you present a deck on like, this is who we are and this is what we're about and this is where we want to be, what we want to be when we grow up and blah blah blah, right?
Oh yeah.
But LAVA actually offers a reverse version where the entrepreneurs, you submit your pitch decks and then they decide what ones who they want to talk to, and then the venture capitalists, they pitch to them like what they're about and the different kind of offerings they have, blah blah blah. So we didn't get into that one, but we got into the after party. So so I still get to meet with them and we still get to talk. So I'm like, hey, whatever, game on. So Caroline says she's laughing. Don't you dare put together. Too young for that. Well, hell, I hope so. So, but no, it'll be a lot of fun. And the feedback I got was they weren't sure if we were ready yet to get investors. Yeah. So I was like, great. Can you give me sample decks so I understand what you want in a presentation? Because the presentation I gave them was based on one that I did for a different VC, like over a year ago. So if any kind of feedback they can give me to help me understand what they really want to know and see would be amazing. So Rod Gilly says, I recently had a ball writing. I had a ball writing a 5K word short. First time I ever wrote a story in first person present tense. I found in editing how easy it is to fall to past tense. Have you ever written such a story? Oh yeah. And actually we see that kind of thing all the time. It's very common that with shorter stories, I don't know why, but for some reason with shorter stories, a lot of authors tend to flip from present to past tense. I think it's because you get in the mindset of the character and you get lost in that and forget like where you are within the story itself. So, and honestly, like I'll still, if it's well written, but there's goofy shit like that, I'll still accept it. We'll just fix it,
Yeah. I saw that just the other day in a short story where
really?
the tense changed. And I came across the other day with it's written from an Australian point of view. So it was it was using the word stood instead of standing, and it came up twice. So it was the man was there, stood, or it was kind of a weird usage, but I think it's Australian / British use of the word.
Oh, I see.
Because the author's Australian, or the narrative's Australian anyway. But yeah, I came across the tense shifting a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
I usually ask, why'd you shift the tense? I say, I didn't know I did.
Yeah, sometimes I will, or sometimes, because you'll notice that the tense shift, like if you were in a dialogue with someone, then our slang, we would do that shift tense. But in the logic of a story, it doesn't make sense. So, yeah. But, yeah, all the time. See it all the time.
You see it in the flow of consciousness where I'm here, but I'm talking about then, but now I'm back to here.
Yep.
Talking about then again.
Yep, exactly.
It needs some attention to pull it off.
And sometimes a lot of times it's the author thinking through the narrative itself, and so they haven't gone through it yet to figure out, like, is this actually sequential, or does this actually make sense logically from a narrative perspective? So that's why editors are so great, because you catch stuff like that. So
yeah.
Rod says, my shorts go through all the same steps as I use for a novel, editing, betas, and such. Is that weird? No, I don't know why that would be weird. I think that's totally fine.
Yeah.
I think with time you start, everyone's personal writing and editing processes evolve, and eventually you hit points where there's specific, like these are the specific steps you take in the development of a story and in the revision process. And that's totally natural. And when you find your natural flow with that, that's when you actually, at least I found, I'm much more productive that way. So, oh, and since I have that trip coming up to Hawaii, heads up that most likely the third book in the Cura series is probably going to be out of Maui. And we may as well make it during like a mass fire. So
disaster.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. What are we going to call the third one?
Well, if everything's on fire, what do you think it should be?
I'll think about it.
Bring It Burning or something? I have no idea.
Yeah.
Rod says, one of my betas noted, and I hadn't noticed this, every one of my stories has a twist. Seems I have developed a style. Wow, I didn't think it would happen to me. Everyone's got a style, whether you realize it or not. So even when you're initially you're imitating other writers, you're still putting your own slant on whatever it is that you're doing. So I don't know. What do you think, Ben? Ben definitely has his own style. I know, because I've edited him.
My style is leaving off the N when I want to say then, but it doesn't come up on spell checker because it's still the. Where'd the N go? I know you deleted it before you sent it back to me. I know you did that.
Of course. Yeah.
Edited it again. Said you missed it.
Maniacal plan.
Yeah. Well, I think the recognizing that you do have that style, sometimes it's rewarding then to know consciously that you're breaking out of it and say, "Oh, this isn't really me, but I like this," and challenge yourself to break out of that style and and appreciate breaking out of the chain. And it's a creative aspect of your creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And it may not be planned. You may just sit down and something come to you one day that's not you. It doesn't feel like you, but you like it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like I have never considered myself to be a poet, although when I was younger, I used to write songs. But that exercise forced me to be more succinct in my and more explicit in my word choice. So that definitely then influenced my longer works.
And even with some poems, sometimes I'll know it's losing energy. You can feel, especially a longer poem. It takes, even though you're telling a story. Sometimes the poems need to be prose, but I'm a lazy prose writer, so it doesn't happen. But it's but you feel it losing energy, and you say, I've got to up the game for this to work. It drags.
Yeah, no, yeah, I mean, I totally, and I find that in prose poetry, it doesn't matter. You definitely can feel the energy.
Yeah.
Caroline says, just don't chase after trends. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you know what? It's fun to imitate a trend just to kind of see how it feels in your stories. But I, again, it's just, I would do it for play, not to just forever I have to do, whatever this trendy thing is. But
a writing exercise just to be writing.
Yeah, exactly. Rod says, I found that writing poetry ignites my creativity for my prose. That's interesting. I actually know quite a few authors that they're every day they minimally read. Sorry, I'm just plugging my laptop back in. Every morning they read poetry, or they'll actually write poetry, but it's intended as an exercise to get the juices flowing. Sorry, hold on. Now I have to plug it in. Aha, it worked. Yay. Okay. But yeah, I mean, or a lot of times, or what I used to do quite frequently was I would intentionally put on my reading list, I would read something for fun and then something because I knew that either the style or that type of author, I wanted to learn from them. So I might pick a Pulitzer or a National Book Award winner, or a specific author whom I admired and said, okay, at least once a week I'm going to read from this, and so I can learn from them stylistically, and then I'll go off and read, like Anne Rice or something, So yeah, something that's again more for fun, and something that's for joy, but also to learn. But Rod says, Dark Violet Dreams on YouTube did a reading of my poem, If Not for Each Promise. She put a tear in my eye. She made my words sound so good. Oh, that's lovely. Congratulations. That's absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
Do you have somebody read your work to see how they interpret it and how it sounds? Because I'm not a big advocate for reading like the sounds of poetry, or books like that, because if you get the cadence right, there's Caroline will tell you in New England there's a way to read poetry, and I'll tell you in the South there's another way to read poetry, and they're both right. But if you get somebody from New England trying to read that Southern poetry, it's not going to be right. And so it's always interesting to get that sound from somebody who's not you or with your background. They don't talk like you.
Well, it's interesting that you raise that, because I know a lot of authors that when they first hear their audiobook performed, they, it's not what they hear in their head, and which is interesting, because sometimes then, they'll learn something about their own writing that they didn't know existed by hearing that third party do that performance. And sometimes that voice then becomes the voice of the character in their head moving forward, which is also, kind of interesting. So Margaret says, you're a fan of Rice's Lestat. I'm a fan of Anne Rice in general. One of my favorite stories, though, is I used to work out in New York City, which was great because I could get amazing deals on Broadway plays. So I went to like every freaking Broadway play that was available at the time, including Anne Rice's Lestat. So they actually created a musical called Lestat, and a friend of mine went with me. It was literally the worst musical I've ever seen in my entire life, but it was one of those, it was so bad that you just laughed the whole time because it was just so completely ridiculous. Yeah. It was really bad. Caroline.
I was stationed in New Orleans for 6 years and lived on St. Charles where the streetcar goes. And we would take walks by Anne Rice's house. I think it was 1325 First Street in New Orleans. And she had a big giant wolf on the balcony. It was just a spooky old house, but it was cool to walk by. I waved. She never waved back. But she had an ongoing battle with Copeland, the founder of Popeye's Chicken. And they were both from New Orleans, but they had different visions for what the city and the city's buildings should look like. Because he was putting restaurants in old buildings, and she wasn't a big fan of that. So they were always fighting.
Okay.
She may have had a character or two after Copeland and killed him off. I don't know.
That's hilarious. Rod says, Ben, you're a real poet. Do you still get a tickle when someone reads your work really well?
I'm appreciative that they get it, because I remember when I submitted Triggerfish 1-2 to Lisa, and she read it and accepted it, but had another reader look at it, and their complaint about it was the story jumps everywhere. You remember, Lisa? They said the story skips and jumps, but that was the point.
Yeah.
So when you do get the story, don't say that's the bad part, because that is the story.
Yeah.
He had a head injury. He could go anywhere in the world. Well, the scenes keep jumping. Yeah.
We've had a couple of reviewers who read a work and they were like, oh, I love this, and this, but I don't know why it did, and it's like, that was the point, it's just strange. And it makes me wonder, if after the fact they went, oh, got it now, they just needed time to digest it. Caroline asks, is there an echo in the room? I don't hear an echo, but that doesn't mean that there isn't one. Do you hear an echo, Ben?
I don't hear an echo, but that doesn't mean there isn't one.
Yeah.
See what I did there?
Yeah, I did. That was smart.
No, I don't hear it either, though. I don't hear one.
No. I don't know. Does anybody else hear one? Rod, I guess not. Rod says, I had someone read my poem, Lone Wolf No More, and he thought it was about actual wolves or dogs. Okay. Huh. Caroline says she's hearing an echo of everything I'm saying. I don't hear an echo either of me or Ben. So I don't know. I don't know what's doing it.
Yeah, there was a songwriter I heard the other day who refused to say what the song was about because it's about what you hear. It's about what you feel. And so I would go back and say it's the same thing with Lone Wolf No More. If they read it about actual wolves and dogs, it's about actual wolves and dogs.
Yeah.
Be glad they read it. And they may be wrong, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm right there with you. I agree. Absolutely. Allow the reader to get out of it whatever they want to get out of it, right? And a lot of times we subconsciously have themes or things in our narratives that we're not even really aware of.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've heard of more authors who they go back and read their work 20 years later and say, "Oh my God." But it's because they have a better understanding of their own life from that period of time and are able to then understand what they were really talking about that they didn't even know was within the piece. Yeah. So
that's always rewarding for someone to see something that you hadn't intended. It works.
Oh yeah, agreed. I was going to mention a couple of things. Anyone who's in the Los Angeles area, next Friday, I think it's next Friday, I am actually, Cass Warner is going to be doing a book signing at Warner Brothers Studios, the retail store part of the studio tours. And she's doing that, I believe it's on Friday. I'm just double checking. Yeah, it's on Friday, the 22nd of September from 3 to 4:30. And I'm going to go there just because I want to, be in support. But she's going to be signing both All About Harry, which is about her grandfather, Harry Warner, and the Brothers Warner 100th anniversary edition, which we obviously, this is the 100th anniversary of the Warner Brothers Studios. So come check us out, say hi. It would be fabulous to see you. I would absolutely adore seeing you guys. So definitely join us. That, I think that's the big one. Oh, and if you're interested, if you're watching and you're interested, we're actually offering Family Pack, which is the follow-up to Cure. If you want like an ebook version or a paperback, I'm happy to send out a sample copy. My only ask is that you'll write a review for it online, which reminds me, I actually have to submit it for review soon, but anyway, whatever. Actually not that soon. I've got some time, but so definitely just ping me and we'll make it happen. So, and by the way, so far, all the feedback on it has been fabulous. Like, people who are not readers are like, "Oh my God, I love this." So Ben, you did a great job.
Don't sound so surprised.
That's true. I shouldn't sound so surprised because I'm not actually.
You got to edit the Coyote story.
Well,
I told you you're pretty good at editing yourself.
Some days, man. Some days. Margaret asks, "Are there some Running Wild press books that sell better than others?" It is all over the world. It's not like there's a theme, but like there's not a specific type of genre that sells really well. We've got like 2 memoirs that are completely wildly different that sell super well. We have an anthology of short stories that are horror short stories that sells really well. That said, it's in benefit of of a nonprofit, and most of the authors who wrote for it are actually really super well-known best-selling authors. So, I mean, I think it has more to do with the fact of who wrote the stories than than anything else. We have another one that's a cross genre. It's like dark fantasy meets magical realism, that sells really well. I think those are like that's like the top 5. And I can look up. I'm looking up now. I'm looking it up now to see the latest numbers, so I can be more specific. But in the meantime, let's see. Rod says your author Anatoly Molotov told me once the same thing Ben just said. He too is a real poet. I am not, but it's fun to give it a go. Well, that's kind of cool.
I think the book sales, it sometimes depends on the timing and the existing network that is already there, but then there appears to be sometimes a just an impromptu network that rises out of something somebody heard or said or saw the book or saw it on social media, and it takes off. Like I say, just an impromptu thing.
That's oftentimes what it is. Oh yeah. So like, so the top number 1 bestseller we have is Giving the Devil His Due. That's the one that's an anthology that benefits the Pixel Project. Our second top seller is Mickey the Giveaway Boy, and that's one of the memoirs that I mentioned. I have no idea, and I don't mean that facetiously. I really don't know why it's such a huge seller. The author, he passed away, I want to say like 2 years ago. For some reason, it's always sold well. It's about the period in the United States history when parents who were poor, they literally basically sell their children into enslavement for periods of time so that they could eat. Both so the parents could eat, but also so the kids could eat. So hence why it's called Mickey the Giveaway Boy, because his mom gave him away a couple times.
He had a short story in, it was anthology 5 or 6, just about the same time he died, and because we did, his daughter had took over the editing and the story itself, and so that may have helped, even being in the anthology and having a series of his own as well.
Well, and we're going to publish his final memoir, Mickey Surviving Salvation, because then his parents went on a religious thing. And his daughter is the one who actually ended up having to edit it because he had passed away by the time he passed away, like obviously right after he had finished writing it, because you can't have passed away and write something. But anyway.
It's one of those movies Steve McQueen made before he died.
I know, right? The third biggest seller we've got is The Magpie's Return. That's another one. I'm not entirely sure why it's a huge seller. It was named one of the best of the year by Kirkus Reviews. But the author, I mean, his name's Curtis Smith. I love Curtis. He's a fabulous author. We just published the third book of a third book of his. He's absolutely wonderful. His writing's phenomenal. He always gets amazing reviews. But to Ben's point, it's just one of those things, like it just took off. Yeah. And then the second, third, fourth is Dance Among the Flames. So that's the one that's the magical realism and dark fantasy. And then the fifth bestseller is Frontal Matter, Blue Gone Wild by Suzanne Samples. And that's about her battle with brain cancer. And she's another one, passed away. She passed away in late 2022, I want to say. And we're about to publish her third and final memoir, 13 Tunnels, she decided that as like for a bucket list, because she knew like you don't survive brain cancer, like that's just not existent. So she made a bucket list of what things she wanted to do before she died, and one of them was to go to visit specific tunnels across the United States, and so that's about her journey with that. But yeah, those are our biggest sellers so far to date. In case anyone's
Nothing
curious.
in common among those 5.
No. I mean, all well written,
yeah.
Right? I mean, I honestly, I think all of our books are well written, but otherwise we wouldn't have accepted them. So, but yeah, to Ben's point, there's nothing at all similar. Rod says Ben edited The Writer Within, so Running Wild Anthology 7 will be a great success.
You know it.
Absolutely, everything Ben edits is a great success.
It's a great success because the author says, "Man, I'm glad he's finished."
He's done. He's done.
Finally.
Caroline asks, wondering how good literary works are doing. Does anybody even care anymore? I'm a punt to Ben on that one.
I think there's good literary works that have been incorporated into genre works, and because I don't want to say a trend, but the motivation to get the book published is, let's see the movie. I want the movie to be made based on the book. And so it's the literary movies may not be doing as well as literary books, but because of the books have gone to the genre that makes money, and which better or worse. But I think readers care. You get a good story. It's whether it's a period piece or just a modern piece with good characters and good action and or not action, but a good storyline, good plot, and that feels real and rings true. Then that's literary work that works. And if you write it, they will come. But the people will care, and I think. But I think what you're seeing is a lot of good writers are incorporating literary elements in their genre work, and that's rewarding to read and see, and edit.
There's actually a really interesting article, I think it was in the New York Times, about horror writers today, and what they were talking about was the fact that these guys are all they're all literary writers, so they're writing very much character driven stories that happen to be horror, and or happen to be considered horror. A lot of times it's really more like kind of like dark fiction or suspense. Like Stephen King is really a suspense author. If you look at his work, it's not, like hardcore blood and guts kind of thing. So I think the reality is, to Ben's point, people are just looking for great stories, but so much of it is finding ways to get the general public aware that the stories exist and that they're available, because there's so much stuff out there, right? There's that some's good, some ain't. And so, it's hard to figure out, like, is this something that I really want to pick up? And so,
some of the ain'ts are successful.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Say, how did that happen?
Well, and sometimes it's because people are like, can you believe how crappy this is? And they pick it up because they want to find out, like, why is this really that bad? And then they're like, oh my God, it really is that bad, But To me, like, that's the real challenge in today's market, is figuring out, like, how do you get these stories in front of people, so they can enjoy them, right? It's not just publishing them, it's just making sure that they're out there. I mean, and that people are aware that they exist. And I do think, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, you see something like Where the Crawdads Sing, and it's has its particular setting and particular people and particular lifestyles, and they interact and merge, and there's tension and there's conflict, and that makes it a good literary work. And then it was also a good movie. Except after I saw the movie, I didn't finish the book. What's the use? But it was still a good story. That was the main attraction, I think.
Yeah, it was a good story. I mean, admittedly, it could have done another edit.
Yeah. Don't get me started on that list.
Well, yeah, but
I've got an issue with Max Perkins and Look Homeward Angel.
Oh, well, that's yeah. There are several books that, like, I read it and I'm like, this is really like a novelette, right? Or it's not a complete narrative. But it did really well, and usually did really well because there was like a couple of chapters that really just were banging. I mean, just like brilliant. And that's what people picked it up for. And I don't blame them, But I do think people care. Back to Caroline's point, does anybody even care anymore? I think they care, but I think in reality, a lot of times people will love something, but they don't know why. They just know that they really thoroughly enjoyed it, right? And
resonation. Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. Like I actually have a coworker who picked up Cure, and she said she read it in 24 hours, and she hadn't done anything like that in years, right? Like, she hadn't found a story that she was like, oh my God, this is amazing, right? Like, she hadn't had that kind of engagement literally in years. So you just don't know, and you don't know why. Rod Gilly asked, is David Fitzpatrick's Wolf Boy coming out soon? It comes out July 22nd, 2024. So a little under a year. Rod says, my new short has a call girl, a vampire, a witch, a ghost, an alien, and Bigfoot. I think that's unique. Do you? Sure, why not? I don't know. It just depends. It depends on how you
home in the subway in Washington, D.C. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, sure. Sounds it can totally work.
Yeah. As long as you keep them separate, make the characters be themselves. Absolutely.
Or maybe make Bigfoot an alien. That might be kind of fun. Margaret, yeah. Margaret says, Lisa and Ben, how many books are you read where you thought, how many books have you read where you thought it needs more editing? Punt.
Let's see. Well, it's I can bring up Hemingway and tell you that I don't care what his characters do. I just don't care.
Right.
So give me some characters there, Ernest, that we care about. But I mentioned Look Homeward Angel, and it was he had a nightmare to start with. The story goes, it came in boxes of writing, and he cut it down as best he could, but he could have gone through again. There's some that you just wonder. Well, I think when authors were writing per word, they could have edited some words out, but it was getting paid by the word. But Like where the crawdads sing could have used some tightening up. Some there's
Yeah.
always a balance there as a reader, and especially with a editing experience, you start to be more critical, but you've got to take it for what it is and say, well, that's what the editor and the author decided on that was necessary. And so it's tough to critique it and say, yeah, cut that out. But when you know that it loses energy, we'll go back to the losing energy when you're reading it and it loses energy. You know that's an indicator that it could have been edited a little tighter, and it may just be a passage here, a passage there, and just to focus, bring the action that is not action, doesn't really have the need for that action to go. It doesn't add value to the story, so why leave it in? And sometimes I think it's just the author convinced the editor that it was necessary. Because I love that scene. It's they all go to the same store, but nothing happens. But it's my favorite store. That's kind of a conversation I had with a writer once. We got it out of there though.
Yeah, I read so much for Running Wild and Rise that I'm really editing. I that when I read for pleasure, it's usually books that others have recommended to me. And so like I've taught myself to have to force my suspension of disbelief and to force my patience. Like I did that with the Crawdads Sing. Like I was getting bored, right? Like I'm like, okay, there must be a reason why we're doing all this, right? I know we're gonna get to it. I'm gonna keep going with it. We're gonna get to it. And then she got to it, and I was like, sweet, right? But then mentally, I started rewriting the lead ups that then gave you the payout, right, at the end of the novel. So even though there are plenty of books out there that, they could, to Ben's point, I mean, they could have definitely done a lot of revision, and really did a greater focus on the story itself and ensuring that there was a payout of some sort, no matter the genre. That, but you just honestly, you end up using it as a tool for strengthening your own skills, or at least I do. So
I think it's an honest look of what adds value to the story. And the author will sometimes be writing for that invisible audience that I've talked about before, and not really give that invisible audience readership, and how they're going to react, and they're going to love this part. Yeah, but what about the next part? Are they going to love it too? And that's what the questions you have to ask. So what's it doing to the reader or for the reader?
100%, right? How is this supporting the story itself? How is this adding value to the reader, right? And honestly, that's a lot of times the kind of questions that I'll ask when I'm editing. Like, so what's the purpose of this? Like, why are we doing this? Why are we spending so much time, back to Ben's point, why are we spending so much time in this store? Like, who gives a shit? There's no payout, right? There's no reason for this, but I love the store. So what? It has nothing to do with the story other than the kid goes in it and they got killer chocolate. I don't care. Even the kid doesn't care. Clearly. But, Caroline says, I'm worried that good literary writers are going toward genres that are hot just to get published. But does it move us forward? Oh, that's a whole nother. I mean, Caroline, so there's certain realities in the publishing industry that if you want to actually be able to make any kind of money, like you want to be able to feed yourself, right? You've got to write within specific genres. And I'm going to be speaking at Microsoft next week and talking about like the publishing industry and all that. And that's actually part of the conversation that we're going to have, which is, look, authors in today's market, the majority are on a contract basis. And the reason they're on a contract by contract basis is because there was actually another article that was published that revealed something like on average, each book sells 500 copies on average. That's including the J.K. Rowling's. It's 300 million, right? So that's telling you there's a whole lot that sell like one, a dozen. That means your grandma bought it, right? Your uncle bought it. That's kind of it, And I mean, there's many, 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 many different reasons for that. But like, like I've been very blessed actually in many ways in my life, but including like I've attended Breadloaf Writers Conference. I've attended Squaw Valley. I've attended Yale Writers Workshop. I've attended Ohio State. And I mean, those are all very hoity-toity Chautauqua, right? These are all hoity-toity literary writers workshops. And I mean, I got to work with, again, super blessed to work with some of the best. And I just literally just sat there and took notes the whole damn time because I was like, oh my God, you're brilliant, right? And these are brilliant literary authors and literary editors. The reality, though, was almost all of them, that writing was not their full-time job. They were instructors, right? They were like Ben, right? They taught at universities. They had some kind of day job that was irrelevant to their writing, but hey, guess what? It put food on the table, and it got them health insurance. And that sounds facetious, but it's real. Like So I honestly, I don't blame really great literary writers to go and write in genres. And honestly, though, guess what? That elevates those genres by having that quality of writer working within those genres. Back to the example I gave in the beginning, that the new trend not new trend, but today's modern horror writers, they're actually literary character-driven authors. And honestly, yay! Stephen King is technically a literary writer. Yay! That's awesome, right? It helps elevate everyone. So, but that's my babble. Let's see. Rod says, I've only been a writer 2 years, but I'm loving it. Well, good. Margaret says, you don't care for Maxwell Perkins, Hemingway's editor? You mean Hemingway's pseudonym? No, not at all.
I like Max Perkins. He was an interesting guy, but when it came to Look Homeward, Angel with Thomas Wolfe, he had a lot to work with and may have run out of time or patience. He said, "Okay, let's go with it." Yeah, because it may say more about how I feel about Thomas Wolfe than Max Perkins. But Thomas Wolfe, he was flowery and could take you to the fields.
Yeah, that's true. Caroline says, getting too heavy, I'm sure, but worried about the importance of good writing and too much escapism work. Everyone running away from what is and does go on in the world, the good and the bad. That's not mutually exclusive. It can be good writing and escapism. It can be both informative within a world as well as something to escape from. That these are not mutually exclusive. And honestly, some of the best writing in the world is exactly that. It's escapism that happens to be brilliantly written. And you know, to me, that's like every National Book Award winner. That's like every Pulitzer Prize winner fits into the category, Caroline, that we're discussing. So Rod says he has 10 times my skills, so there will certainly be some blood on the page, but less, I think. I'm guessing you're talking about Ben, and you can't not have Ben as your editor.
I've got him traumatized with my red pen.
Dun, dun, dun. But what's nice about when Ben's your editor, he's thinking through not just the narrative itself, but what else can we do with this narrative so that again, to elevate it, right, or to bring it forward in some way. So I think it's a blast having Ben as an editor.
Through the reader's eyes, for one. And are you going to maintain that? Because I put a lot of books down, and I hate doing that because something's wrong with me if I have to put a book down. What's wrong with me? What am I missing? But sometimes it's not me at all. It's just way too many words. Speaking of another one that needed editing, the Milagro Beanfield War, John Nichols, it tried to be too much to too many people, and it didn't work. It fell flat. But it goes back to the energy level. I like that idea of the words having energy on the page that you read, and then they have energy in your mind and they stick with you. And it's like I think I was talking to Caroline about this with the Grapes of Wrath. Read chapter 7. It's some of the best poetry written as prose in U.S. literature. It is a poem, but it's all about used cars, and it's some of the best written stuff that Steinbeck ever did. And really, it was a kind of a digression. Before they bought the old 26 Hudson to lead the Dust Bowl, it talked about the car dealer and what the car dealer was thinking, but it fit, it worked. It was a digression. It had nothing to do with the Joad family. It was the car dealer selling cars, but it fit the story, and it fit the book. So there's just techniques you can use. Some work, some don't. Find out what works.
Absolutely. And a lot of times, honestly, like if I'm working with an author who's trying to do something more complex in terms of structure, or something they're trying to do something in a narrative that's not quite working. I'll basically walk through with them like, all right, so what books are accomplished what you were trying to accomplish? Now let's look at the techniques that author used in order to do that. And how can you then leverage those techniques, right? So that, because I want the story to work. I want them to fulfill whatever it is they're trying to fulfill. And the easiest and the smartest way, in my opinion, to do it is figure out who's done it before you and use their techniques.
It was like with Dystopian Waste or Obsidian Waste with Rodolfo Serna, who I work with here in Albuquerque, but I was editing his book, and it was in a traditional paragraph by paragraph prose written, but it was a lot of poetic language in it. So I asked him, I said, Rodolfo, what do you think about if we break up these paragraphs and put fragments of lines on, give them their own line and justify them and make it look like they came off scrolls, because we're talking about a future world anyway. And I was very hesitant to hear his answer, but he said, "Yeah, I've been looking at this for years, and that would work. That's exactly what I've been seeing." And so we did break it up, and we called the sections, instead of chapters or whatever, section 1 or 2 or whatever it was, we started calling them scrolls and said this was scroll 1, to where it looked like this story that he was telling had been found and in the future, and it makes the reader an anthropologist digging up relics, and it'll be released in January. We'll see if it worked.
Absolutely. Wow. And with that, your timing's perfect. We are exactly at 6 p.m. So I just want to thank everybody so much for all the fantastic questions. As usual, Ben and I will go on the side and figure out which one of you lovely people we would like to give a book of your choice to. Awesome to see everyone. Caroline, Rod, Cree, Margaret, everybody. Thank you so much. And if you're watching this and it's the recorded version and you have any questions for us, please feel free to go ahead and pop your questions into the comments section and we will be sure to respond. So with that, have a fantastic week, guys.
Thanks for coming. See you next week.